When Lana walked into the Huntington estate, clutching the hands of her 5-year-old twins, the whispers began immediately. To the wealthy guests, she was just a desperate ex-girlfriend in a worn-out dress, crashing the wedding of the century to beg the groom for child support. The bride and her family laughed, mocking her poverty and her fatherless children. But their amusement ended the second Lana took the microphone. She wasn't there for the groom at all. The secret she unleashed destroyed the entire Huntington dynasty in seconds, because the father of her children wasn't the man standing at the altar. It was the man paying for the wedding. The envelope looked like it had been crafted from heavy, cream-colored slate rather than paper. It was thick, textured, and smelled faintly of expensive vanilla and old money. Lana Bennett held it in her trembling hands, standing in the narrow hallway of her 2-bedroom apartment. The linoleum floor was peeling slightly at the corners, a stark contrast to the embossed gold calligraphy on the envelope that read, Miss Lana Bennett. "Mom, who's it from?" Lana looked down. Leo, her 5-year-old son, was tugging at her jeans. He had chocolate on his chin and the innocent curiosity that only a child could possess. Behind him, his twin sister, Mia, was busy trying to braid the tassels of the living room rug. "It's just a letter, baby," Lana said, her voice tight. She knew exactly who it was from. The return address was simply a crest, a lion standing on its hind legs, clutching a shield, the Huntington family crest. Lana ripped the seal. Inside was an invitation to the wedding of Thomas Miller and Jessica Huntington. Thomas. Even seeing his name in print made her stomach churn. 3 years ago, Tom had been the love of her life. They had been high school sweethearts, surviving college on ramen noodles and shared dreams. Then, Tom got a job at Huntington Corp. He started working late. He started buying nicer suits. He started talking about ambition and networking more than he talked about them. And then he met Jessica, the CEO's daughter. The breakup had been brutal. Tom hadn't just left. He had upgraded. He told Lana that he needed a partner who could elevate him, someone who fit the world he was entering. He left Lana when she was 2 months pregnant, though he didn't know it at the time. When she finally told him, weeks after he moved into the Huntington penthouse, his lawyer sent her a cease and desist letter and a check for $5,000 to deal with the problem. Lana had torn up the check. She had kept the babies. She had never spoken to Tom again. So why was she holding an invitation to his wedding? She flipped the card over. On the back, in sharp, angular handwriting that she recognized immediately as Jessica's, was a note. "Lana, we thought it would be charitable to invite you. Tom feels bad about how things ended, and we want to show there are no hard feelings. Plus, we'd love to see how you're managing. Do come. It will be a sight to behold." Jessica. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. It was a dare. "What is it, Mum?" Mia asked, abandoning the rug to join her brother. Lana looked at her children. They had the dark hair and the piercing eyes that everyone assumed came from Tom, but Lana knew better. She looked at the invitation again, her eyes drifting to the name of the host at the top. "Mr. Arthur Huntington requests the honor of your presence." A cold, hard resolve settled in Lana's chest. For 5 years she had struggled. She had worked double shifts at the diner. She had thrifted clothes. She had endured the pitying looks of neighbors who saw a single mom with twins. Meanwhile, Tom played the role of the golden boy, and the Huntingtons played the role of American royalty. They wanted to see how she was managing? They wanted to gloat? "Mum?" Leo asked again. Lana crumpled the envelope, but she kept the card. She smoothed it out on the small, scratched entry table. "It's an invitation to a party," Lana said, a strange calmness taking over her voice. "A very fancy party." "Can we go?" Mia squealed. Lana looked at the date. It was next Saturday. "Yes," Lana whispered, a dangerous glint in her eyes that her children had never seen before. "We're going. It's time everyone met the family." The Huntington estate was less of a home and more of a fortress of wealth. Located in the Hamptons, it sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean, a sprawling mansion of white stone and manicured ivy. The driveway was lined with Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, and Ferraris. Valets in white gloves were scurrying back and forth, parking cars that cost more than Lana would earn in 10 lifetimes. Lana pulled her 10-year-old Honda Civic up to the entrance. The brakes squeaked, a high-pitched screech that cut through the soft jazz playing from the garden speakers. A valet paused, looking at the dented bumper with a mixture of confusion and disdain. "Name?" the valet asked, not bothering to open her door. "Lana Bennett," she said, stepping out. She had spent her entire savings on this day. She wore a dress she had found at a high-end consignment shop, a deep emerald green silk gown that hugged her figure and fell elegantly to the floor. It was simple, but on her it looked regal. She had curled her hair and applied her makeup with precision, but the real showstoppers were Leo and Mia. She had dressed Leo in a tiny black tuxedo and Mia in a dress of matching emerald silk. They looked angelic. They also looked expensive. The valet checked his clipboard, his eyebrows shooting up. "Ah, yes, the guest. You may park around the back, near the service entrance. The front lot is full." It was a lie. There were clearly spots. Lana didn't argue. She got back in, drove around the back, and walked her children to the front entrance. As they walked onto the main lawn, the wedding reception was in full swing. It was a garden party straight out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers hung from the branches of massive oak trees. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and caviar. A string quartet played softly near a fountain that was literally flowing with rose wine. The conversation died down as Lana walked in. It started as a ripple, a few heads turning, and then spread like a wave until the entire lawn was silent. Eyes scanned her. She could hear the whispers. "Is that her? The ex-girlfriend? My God, she brought the kids. Look at that car she drove. She has no shame." Lana held her head high, gripping her children's hands. She walked straight toward the center of the gathering, where the bridal party was holding court. Jessica Huntington stood in the center, looking like a princess in a dress that probably cost 6 figures. She was blonde, statuesque, and currently sneering. Tom was next to her, holding a glass of scotch, looking pale. When Jessica saw Lana, her smile didn't falter. It sharpened. She detached herself from a group of admirers and glided over, her bridesmaids trailing her like a pack of mean wolves. "Lana!" Jessica's voice was loud, designed to carry. "You actually came." She stopped a few feet away, looking Lana up and down. "And you rented a dress. How resourceful," the crowd tittered. Lana smiled politely. "It's good to see you, Jessica. Congratulations." Jessica laughed, a tinkling, hollow sound. She looked down at the twins. "And you brought the baggage. I thought the invitation said adults only, but I suppose when you can't afford a babysitter, you have to improvise." Tom stepped forward, looking nervous. "Jess, maybe we shouldn't—" "Hush, Tom," Jessica snapped, not looking at him. She bent down, bringing her face level with Leo. "Hello there, little boy. I bet you've never seen so much food in your life, have you? Make sure you don't wipe your hands on the tablecloths. They're silk." Leo shrank back behind Lana's leg. Lana's grip on her son's hand tightened. "They're well behaved, Jessica, which is more than I can say for some adults here." The crowd gasped softly. Jessica straightened up, her eyes flashing. Brave words for someone who crashed a wedding she clearly doesn't belong at. "Look around you, Lana. This is the elite. These are senators, CEOs, oil magnates. And you're a waitress who got dumped because she wasn't good enough." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a vicious whisper that only Lana and Tom could hear. "Everyone knows why you're here. You think if you parade these kids in front of Tom, he'll cut you a check? He doesn't want them. He never did. They're nothing to him. Just reminders of a mistake. Lana looked at Tom. He was looking at his shoes, swirling his drink, refusing to meet her eyes. The cowardice radiated off him. "Is that true, Tom?" Lana asked, her voice clear. "You think these children are a mistake?" Tom looked up, his face flushed. "Lana, please, don't make a scene. Just grab some food and go. I'll send you some money on Monday. Just leave." "Money?" Lana repeated, shaking her head. "You still think this is about money?" Suddenly, a booming voice cut through the tension. "What is going on here?" The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Walking toward them was a man who radiated power. He was in his 60s, with silver hair, a hawk-like nose, and a tuxedo that fit him like armor. It was Arthur Huntington, the patriarch, the billionaire, the father of the bride. He walked with a cane, not out of necessity, but as a prop for authority. He stopped beside Jessica, looking at Lana with cold blue eyes. "Father," Jessica said, slipping her arm through his. "It's just Tom's ex. She's trying to cause trouble. I was just asking security to escort her out." Arthur looked at Lana. For a second, his expression was unreadable. Then his eyes drifted down to the twins. He stared at Leo, then at Mia. His face paled slightly, just for a fraction of a second, before returning to its stony mask. "I see," Arthur said. His voice was gravel and steel. "We don't need charity cases here, causing a scene on my daughter's special day." He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a money clip. He peeled off a stack of $100 bills, probably $2,000, and held it out to Lana. "Take it," Arthur said, his tone dismissive. "Buy the children some ice cream. And leave." The disrespect was absolute. He was treating her like a beggar. The crowd watched, breathless, waiting to see if the struggling single mum would take the cash. Lana looked at the money. Then she looked at Arthur. She didn't take it. Instead, she laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was a genuine, amused laugh. "You think I want your pocket change, Arthur?" Lana asked. The use of his first name sent a shockwave through the guests. No one called Arthur Huntington by his first name unless they were his equal. "Excuse me?" Arthur stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "You insolent! I suggest you keep your money," Lana said, her voice dropping the pleasant facade. She looked around the garden, making eye contact with the shocked guests. "You're going to need it for the lawyers." "Security!" Jessica screamed, her face turning red. "Get her out of here, now!" Two large men in black suits started moving toward Lana. "Don't touch me," Lana warned, holding up a hand. She reached into her purse. Everyone flinched, expecting a weapon. Instead, she pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I'll leave," Lana said, "but not before I give the groom his wedding gift." She walked up to Tom, who looked like he was about to faint. She pressed the paper into his chest. "Read it, Tom," she said. "Read it out loud so everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are." Tom's hands shook as he unfolded the paper. Jessica tried to snatch it, but Lana caught her wrist. "Let him read it," Lana hissed. Tom looked at the document. His eyes scanned the lines. His mouth fell open. He looked at Lana, then at the twins, and finally, with a look of absolute horror, at Arthur. "What is it?" Jessica shrieked. "What does it say?" Tom couldn't speak. He just dropped the paper. It floated to the ground, landing face up on the pristine green grass. It was a DNA test, but it wasn't testing Tom against the children. The header read, "Paternity test results. Alleged father, Arthur James Huntington." And the result, bolded in black ink, positive. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. The silence that descended on the Huntington lawn was heavier than the humid Hamptons air. It was a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the lungs of 200 guests. The piece of paper lay on the grass, pristine and white against the emerald green. Jessica was the first to move. Her initial shock morphed into a jagged, frantic denial. She dropped to her knees, heeding no mind to a $50,000 Vera Wang gown, and snatched up the paper. Her eyes darted across the lines, desperate to find a mistake, a forgery, a lie. This is fake," she stammered, her voice trembling. She looked up at her father, her mascara already beginning to smudge. "Daddy, tell them it's fake. Tell this trash to leave." Arthur Huntington did not speak. He was frozen. For the first time in his life, the titan of industry, the man who could crash stock markets with a single tweet, looked utterly defenseless. He was staring at the twins. He looked at Leo. He saw the distinctive cleft in the boy's chin, a genetic quirk known as the Huntington mark that had been in his family for 4 generations. He looked at Mia. He saw the steely blue eyes that stared back at him with a terrifying familiarity. They were his eyes. "Arthur." Lana's voice broke the trance. She wasn't shouting. She was calm, standing amidst the wreckage she had just caused like the eye of a storm. "Aren't you going to say hello to your children?" "You lie!" Tom suddenly shouted, finding his voice. He stepped forward, his face a mask of panic and confusion. "This is impossible. We were together. You were pregnant when I left. They're mine. Or you cheated on me. That's it. You cheated on me with him?" Tom pointed a shaking finger at Arthur. "You slept with my boss while we were together?" The crowd murmured. The scandal was shifting. Was the poor single mother actually a mistress? Lana laughed again, but this time it was cold. She walked over to a nearby waiter, who was so stunned he was still holding a tray of champagne. She took a glass, took a sip, and then turned to face the crowd. "I didn't sleep with Arthur," Lana said, her voice projecting clearly. "And you know that, Tom. You know exactly how those children were conceived. Or have you forgotten the clinic? Have you forgotten Dr. Henderson?" Tom's face drained of all color. He looked like he was going to be sick. "The clinic!" Jessica stood up, clutching the DNA test. She looked between Tom and her father. "What is she talking about? Tom, what clinic?" Lana stepped closer to the microphone stand that had been set up for the wedding speeches. She tapped it. Thump, thump. The sound echoed through the garden speakers. "Since we're all sharing," Lana said, addressing the hundreds of guests, "I think it's time for a little story. A toast, if you will, to the happy couple." She looked at the guests. "You all know Tom Miller as the rising star of Huntington Corp., the man who clawed his way up from middle management to marry the boss's daughter. But 3 years ago, Tom wasn't a rising star. He was just a desperate, insecure man who found out he couldn't have children." A gasp rippled through the crowd. In their circle, lineage was everything. Male infertility was a taboo, a weakness not to be discussed. "Stop her!" Jessica screamed at the security guards. "Cut the mic!" "Let her speak!" Arthur roared. The command cracked like a whip. The security guards froze. Jessica flinched as if she'd been slapped. Arthur was staring at Lana, his expression intense, demanding answers. Lana nodded at Arthur. "Thank you." She turned back to the crowd. Tom was devastated. Not because he wanted to be a father, oh no. He didn't care about raising kids. He cared about his legacy. He wanted heirs. He wanted children who looked perfect, who would help him fit into this world he so desperately wanted to join. She gestured to the lavish estate around them. "So we went to a fertility clinic. We chose in vitro fertilization. We needed a donor. But Tom couldn't just pick a random donor. He was obsessed with success. He told the doctors he wanted the premium profile. He wanted genes from a leader, a captain of industry, a man of power. He paid extra, thousands extra, to access the executive donor list. Anonymous, of course." Lana paused, letting the words sink in. She looked directly at Tom, who was now trembling uncontrollably. "You signed the papers, Tom. You picked donor hash 892 because his profile said he was a CEO with a high IQ and a dominant genetic history. You wanted your kids to be winners." She turned to Arthur. "You didn't know, did you, Arthur, that 25 years ago, when you were starting your empire and the clinic was soliciting high-value donations for their exclusive program. Your sample was never destroyed as you requested later. It was kept. It was premium product. Arthur's mouth opened slightly. He remembered. It was a lifetime ago. A favor for a friend who ran a research institute, a vanity donation he had forgotten about a week later. When Tom left me, Lana continued, her voice hitching slightly with emotion, he told me the kids were baggage. He told me he was moving on to a better class of people. He left me with nothing. No child support, no help, just his sneering judgment. She looked at Jessica. So imagine my surprise, Jessica, when I did a 23andMe test on the twins last month to look for health markers, and I found a familial match, a first cousin match. You. Jessica dropped the paper. She looked at the twins. If they were Arthur's children, they weren't her stepchildren. They were her half-siblings. Which means, Lana said, delivering the final blow, that Tom didn't just leave his girlfriend. He abandoned the biological children of the man he's trying to impress. He called Arthur Huntington's son and daughter mistakes. Lana looked at Arthur. You called them charity cases, Arthur. You tried to pay me off with pocket change. She gestured to Leo and Mia, who were watching the scene with wide eyes. Meet Leo Arthur Bennett and Mia Rose Bennett. Your blood, your heirs, and the grandchildren you never knew you had, until you mocked their mother. The crash of a glass shattering punctuated Lana's speech. It was Tom. His Scotch glass had slipped from his numb fingers, exploding on the patio stones. The sound seemed to break the spell binding the audience. Pandemonium broke out. Reporters, who had been relegated to the back perimeter, were frantically typing on their phones. This wasn't just wedding gossip. This was corporate news. Huntington Corp heir revelation. Stock prices could fluctuate. Inheritance wars. Jessica was hyperventilating. She turned on Tom, her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. You idiot! You absolute moron! She shoved him, hard. Tom stumbled back, nearly tripping over her train. I didn't know, Tom pleaded, looking around for an ally and finding none. Jess, baby, I swear, it was anonymous. How could I know it was your father? You wanted a better donor? Jessica screeched, her voice cracking. You thought you weren't good enough, so you went shopping for a better dad, and you picked mine. The Freudian horror of it was not lost on the crowd. People were covering their mouths, hiding smirks or gasps of shock. But Arthur Huntington wasn't looking at Tom. He wasn't looking at Jessica. He was moving. With a speed that belied his age, Arthur walked down the few steps from the altar area and approached Lana and the children. The crowd parted instantly, giving him a wide berth. He stopped 3 feet away from them. He looked at Lana. There was a new respect in his eyes, mixed with wariness. She had just humiliated him, yes, but she had also brought him something he had secretly desired for decades. Arthur had built an empire, but he had no male heir. Jessica was capable, but she was flighty, obsessed with social standing rather than the business. Arthur had always lamented that the Huntington name would end with him. He looked down at Leo. The boy stood his ground. He didn't hide behind his mother's leg this time. He looked up at the tall man in the tuxedo and frowned. You were mean to my mummy, Leo said. His voice was small but clear. Arthur blinked. A slow, strange smile spread across his face. It wasn't a warm smile. Arthur didn't do warm. But it was a smile of recognition. I was, Arthur admitted. He knelt down, his knee popping audibly, so he was eye level with the boy. I was very rude. I apologize. He extended a hand. I am your father. No, Leo said, ignoring the hand. You're the rich man. I don't have a dad. My mum is my dad. The crowd went silent again. That sting hurt Arthur more than Lana's speech. Arthur retracted his hand, standing up slowly. He looked at Lana. You have raised them with spirit, Arthur said. I raised them with love, Lana corrected him sharply. Something you and your family seem to know very little about. Father, Jessica marched over, grabbing Arthur's arm. Stop talking to her. She's ruined my wedding. Kick them out, and we are suing her for defamation, for fraud." Arthur pulled his arm away from Jessica with a violent jerk. "Be quiet, Jessica," he snapped. "But I said be quiet." Arthur's voice boomed. He turned to look at Tom, who was cowering near the flower arch. "Thomas," Arthur said. The name sounded like a death sentence. "Sir, please," Tom whimpered. "I can explain. I can fix this." "You abandoned my children," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You knew Lana was pregnant. You knew you had utilized a donor. You knew those children were not biologically yours, yet you signed the papers accepting responsibility. And then you walked away. You left my grandchildren, my son and my daughter, to live in poverty while you drank my scotch and slept in my house." Arthur took a step toward Tom. "You told me you were a man of honor. You are a parasite." Arthur turned to the head of security. "Mr. Henderson." "Yes, sir," the large man replied. "Escort Mr. Miller off the property." "Arthur, wait!" Tom cried out as the guards grabbed his arms. "The wedding! The merger! We have the press release scheduled for Monday." "There will be no wedding," Arthur said coldly, "and you are fired. Effective immediately. If you ever set foot in a Huntington building again, I will have you arrested for trespassing. And Tom?" Tom stopped struggling, looking back with wild eyes. "I will make sure you never work in this town, or on Wall Street again. You wanted a legacy? I'll give you one. You'll be the man who threw away a fortune." Tom was dragged away, his pleas fading as he was hauled towards the parking lot. Jessica stood alone at the altar. Her groom was gone. Her father was ignoring her. The guests were watching her humiliation. She burst into tears, turned, and ran into the mansion. Lana watched it all with a stoic expression. She felt no joy in Jessica's pain, but seeing Tom destroyed, that felt like justice. She looked down at the twins. "Come on, guys, let's go get burgers." She turned to leave. She had done what she came to do. She had exposed the truth. She didn't want their money. She just wanted them to know that they hadn't broken her. "Wait." Arthur's voice stopped her. Lana turned around. "We're leaving, Arthur. I'm not staying for the cake." "Lana," Arthur said. He walked over to her. He looked different now. The arrogance was cracked. He looked like a man who had just found a diamond in a pile of ash. "You can't just leave," Arthur said. "Those are my children." "They are my children," Lana said fiercely. "You were just a donor number in a catalogue. You have no rights." "I have money," Arthur said. "I have lawyers. I could crush you." Lana stepped into his personal space. "Try it. You just saw what I did to your reputation with one piece of paper. Imagine what I'll do if you try to take my kids. The press loves a David and Goliath story, Arthur. And right now, I'm holding the slingshot." Arthur stared at her. For a long moment, the billionaire and the waitress locked eyes. Then Arthur laughed. A real hearty laugh. "You have fire," he said. "Good. The Huntington line needed fresh blood. We've become soft." He looked at Leo and Mia again. "I don't want to take them from you, Lana," Arthur lied. Or perhaps it was a half-truth. He knew he couldn't take them. Not with the optics. "But I want to know them. I have a duty, and they have an inheritance." Lana hesitated. She looked at her beat-up car in the distance. She thought about the overdue rent on her counter. She thought about Leo's holy sneakers. "I don't want your money for me," Lana said. "For them," Arthur pressed. "Schools, security, the future. You can't deny them their birthright just because you hate me." It was a manipulative argument, and it was brilliant. It struck at the one weakness Lana had, her desire to give her kids the best life possible. Lana looked at the twins. Leo was looking at the fountain again. Mia was yawning. "We're leaving now," Lana said firmly. "If you want to talk, you can call my lawyer. I'm sure you can afford to find my number." She turned and walked away, her head held high, clutching her children's hands. As she walked down the aisle, past the stunned senators and the gaping socialites. No one mocked her dress. No one whispered about her car. They looked at her with fear and awe. She wasn't just the ex-girlfriend anymore. She was the mother of the heirs. 3 days after the wedding that never was, Lana's life had transformed from a quiet struggle into a circus. News vans were parked illegally on the curb outside her apartment complex. Paparazzi camped on the fire escapes. The headlines were relentless. The Cinderella scandal, billionaires' secret heirs found in Queens, and Huntington dynasty shattered. Lana had called in sick to the diner, afraid to step outside. But by Wednesday, she couldn't hide anymore. She needed the money. She slipped out the back exit, wearing a hoodie and dark glasses, and made it to Joe's all-day breakfast just in time for the lunch rush. The moment she tied her apron on, the bell above the door chimed. But it wasn't a customer. It was a suit. Then another suit. Then 4 men in dark glasses who spread out, effectively blocking the entrance. The chatter in the diner died instantly. Arthur Huntington walked in. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo this time. He wore a charcoal Italian suit that probably cost more than the diner's annual revenue. He didn't look at the menu. He looked straight at Lana, who was holding a pot of coffee behind the counter. "Table for 1, Arthur said smoothly, walking to the booth nearest the window. He gestured to his security team. "And buy everyone else's meal. Tell them to leave. I'm renting the establishment for the hour." The patrons didn't argue. Free lunch and a story to tell? They scrambled for the door. Within 2 minutes, the diner was empty, except for Lana, the cook, who was peeking through the kitchen porthole in terror, and Arthur. Lana walked over, slamming the coffee pot down on his table. "You can't just buy people out of rooms, Arthur. It's rude." "It's efficient," Arthur countered. He placed a thick leather folder on the sticky laminate table. "Sit down, Lana." "I'm working. I bought the hour. That means I'm paying your wages. Sit." Lana glared at him, but slid into the booth opposite him. "If you're here to threaten me, I have a recording app running on my phone right now." Arthur offered a rare, dry chuckle. "Always on the defensive. I like that. It means you're smart." "No, I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to negotiate." He opened the folder. It was a contract. "I've spoken to my lawyers," Arthur began. "Legally, you are correct. As a sperm donor, I have no parental rights. I signed them away 25 years ago. You could keep Leo and Mia from me forever, and a judge would likely side with you." "Then why are you here?" "Because you're a good mother," Arthur said. The compliment threw Lana off guard. "I've had investigators look into you. You work 60 hours a week. You clip coupons. You read to them every night. You've done a remarkable job with limited resources." He tapped the document. "But you are one medical emergency away from bankruptcy, Lana. You live in a neighborhood with a subpar school district. My biological children, my heirs, are sleeping on a pull-out couch." Lana stiffened. "They are happy." "They are safe," Arthur corrected, "but they are not secure. I am offering you a partnership." He pushed the paper toward her. "I am setting up an irrevocable trust for Leo and Mia. $50 million each, accessible when they turn 25. In the meantime, the trust covers all education, healthcare, security, and housing." Lana felt dizzy. The numbers were astronomical. "What's the catch?" she whispered. "The catch," Arthur said, leaning in, his blue eyes piercing, "is that they must be raised knowing who they are. I want visitation. Every other weekend at the estate. I want to select their schools. Private, top tier. And I want you to move." "Move?" "I've purchased a townhouse on the Upper East Side. It's in your name. It's 10 minutes from my office. You will live there with them. I'm not asking for custody, Lana. I'm asking for access." Lana looked at the contract. It was freedom. It was safety. It was everything she had ever worried about at 3 a.m., solved with a signature. But it was also a deal with the devil. "And Jessica?" Lana asked. How does your daughter feel about you giving half her inheritance to the charity cases? Arthur's face darkened. Jessica is adjusting. She is my daughter, and I love her, but she lacks vision. She thinks money is for spending. I believe money is for building. Leo and Mia represent a new foundation. If I sign this, Lana said, I stay in charge. You don't overrule my parenting. If I say no candy, it means no candy. If I say they learn to do their own laundry, they do their laundry. I won't have them turn into spoiled brats like... She trailed off. Like Jessica? Arthur finished. He smiled grimly. Agreed. I want them strong, not pampered. Lana picked up a pen from her apron pocket. Her hand hovered over the paper. She thought of Leo's worn-out shoes. She thought of Mia's brilliance that was being stifled in an overcrowded classroom. She signed. Meanwhile, in the penthouse of the Huntington Hotel, Jessica Huntington was screaming. She threw a crystal vase across the room. It shattered against the wall, joining a pile of other broken objects. "He's rewriting the will!" she shrieked into her phone. "My source at the firm just told me. He's creating trusts for the bastards." On the other end of the line was Tom. He was currently staying at a cheap motel near the airport, desperate and drunk. "Jess, you have to help me," Tom slurred. "I have nothing. Your dad blacklisted me." "Shut up, Tom," Jessica snapped. "This isn't about you anymore. This is about me. He's going to give my money to that waitress and her freak twins." As she paced the room, her heels clicking on the marble floor like gunfire. "I need to stop this," she hissed. "Daddy is blinded by this legacy nonsense. He thinks they're perfect little angels. I need to show him that they're trash, and that their mother is incompetent." "How?" Tom asked uselessly. Jessica stopped pacing. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked deranged, but she also looked determined. "There's a family dinner this weekend," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "The first introduction. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to make sure that by the time dessert is served, Lana wishes she had never walked into our lives." "Jess, don't do anything crazy," Tom warned. "I'm not going to be crazy, Tom," Jessica smiled. And it was terrifying. "I'm going to be helpful. I'm going to help Lana. Right out the door." The townhouse Arthur gave them was beautiful, but it felt cold. Lana spent the first few days just trying to figure out the light switches. On Saturday, the black town car arrived to take them to the Hamptons. Leo and Mia were nervous. Lana had explained that they were going to see the grandfather man again, and that he wanted to be nice this time. Leo was skeptical. Mia, however, was intrigued by the promise of a library. When they arrived at the estate, the atmosphere was different from the wedding day. It was quiet. The staff stood in a line to greet them. Arthur was waiting on the steps. He looked less like a titan and more like an awkward grandfather trying to figure out the protocol for 5-year-olds. "Welcome," Arthur said. He nodded to Lana, then looked at the twins. I bought a pony." Lana blinked. "A pony?" "I was told children like ponies," Arthur said defensively. "It's in the stable." "Can we see it?" Leo asked, his eyes widening. "Of course." As they walked toward the stables, a figure emerged from the garden. It was Jessica. She was dressed in riding gear, tight breeches, tall boots, and a fitted blazer. She looked every inch the aristocrat. To Lana's surprise, Jessica was smiling. "Lana!" Jessica exclaimed, walking over with open arms. She air-kissed Lana near the cheek. "I'm so glad you're here, really." Lana didn't hug back. "Jessica, I'm surprised to see you." "Oh, please, families fight." Jessica waved a hand dismissively. "Daddy and I had a long talk. I realized I was just jealous. It was a shock, you know. But these are my siblings. I want to get to know them." She knelt down to the twins. "Hi, Leo. Hi, Mia. I'm your big sister, Jess. Do you want to see the pony? I can show you how to groom him." Arthur looked relieved. "I'm glad you've come around, Jessica." "I have, Daddy," she said sweetly. Why don't you take Lana to the library to sign those school papers? I'll watch the kids for 20 minutes, just in the paddock. The grooms are right there." Lana hesitated. Her instinct screamed, "No." "It's okay, Mom," Mia said, looking at the horses in the distance. "I want to see." "I'll be right here," Arthur said. "The paddock is visible from the library window. We can watch them the whole time." Lana nodded slowly. "Okay. 20 minutes." She went with Arthur into the house. As soon as they were inside, Jessica's smile vanished. She led the twins to the stables. The pony, a gentle Shetland, was tied to a post. "He's cute," Leo said, reaching out to pat the nose. "He is," Jessica said. She looked around. The stable hands were busy at the other end of the barn. "You know," Jessica said softly, "ponies love treats. There's a special bag of carrots in the tack room. Do you want to get them?" "Yeah," Leo said. "It's that room right there." Jessica pointed to a door that was slightly ajar. "Go ahead. I'll hold the pony." Leo and Mia ran towards the tack room. Jessica waited until they were inside. Then she quickly moved to a shelf where the grooms kept expensive equipment. She grabbed a small, antique silver horse statue, a prize Arthur had won years ago, worth thousands. She slipped into the tack room behind the kids. "Found them yet?" she asked. "No," Mia said, looking at the shelves. "Oh, maybe they're in this bin," Jessica said. As she bent down, she deftly slid the silver statue into Leo's small backpack that he carried his toy cars in. She tucked it deep at the bottom. "Here they are." Jessica produced a carrot she had been hiding in her hand. "Okay, feed him quickly, and then we have to go back. Daddy doesn't like people touching his things in here." They fed the pony, and Jessica marched them back to the house. Inside the library, Arthur and Lana were discussing school curriculums. "They're back," Arthur said, seeing them through the window. "Let's go down for lunch." Lunch was set on the terrace. It was an awkward affair. Jessica was overly chatty, asking the twins about their favorite colors. As the waiters cleared the plates, Jessica suddenly gasped. "Oh no," she said, patting her pockets. "My diamond bracelet. It's gone." Arthur frowned. "The Cartier one?" "Yes, I had it on in the stable. I took it off for a second in the tack room because the clasp was loose and set it on the table. It's gone." She looked at the twins. Did anyone see a shiny bracelet?" Leo shook his head. "That's strange," Jessica said, her eyes narrowing. "Because no one else was in the tack room except you two." "Jessica," Arthur warned. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything, Daddy. But kids like shiny things. Maybe they thought it was a toy." She turned to Leo. "Leo, honey, can I see your backpack?" "No," Lana said, standing up. "You are not searching my son." "If he didn't take it, there's nothing to hide," Jessica said, her voice rising. "Unless you taught them to steal? Is that how you survived all these years? Pickpocketing? Enough!" Arthur slammed his hand on the table. "Check the bag, Daddy," Jessica insisted. "If it's not there, I'll apologize." "But if it is—" Arthur looked at Lana. "Lana, just show her so we can end this hysteria." Lana grabbed Leo's backpack. She knew her son. He wasn't a thief. She unzipped it and dumped the contents onto the patio table. Toy cars, a juice box, a coloring book, and a heavy antique silver horse statue. Silence fell over the table. Jessica's eyes went wide, but not with triumph. She looked confused. "Where is the bracelet?" "What is this?" Arthur asked, picking up the silver statue. "This is from my trophy case in the study. How did it get in the bag?" Jessica stammered. "I don't know. I was looking for my bracelet." "The bracelet isn't here," Lana said coldly. "But this statue is." Then Mia spoke up. She was sitting calmly, cutting a piece of melon. The lady put it there. All eyes turned to the 5-year-old girl. "Mia," Lana said gently. "What did you say?" "The lady," Mia pointed at Jessica with her fork. "When we were in the room for the carrots, she put the metal horse in Leo's bag. She thought I didn't see because I was looking at the saddles, But I saw in the mirror. Mia pointed to her own eyes. I pay attention. Jessica turned pale. She's lying. She's a lying little brat. Is she? Arthur asked quietly. He turned the silver horse over in his hands. This statue hasn't been in the tack room, Jessica. It's been on the mantel in the library. The library you walked through to get to the garden before we went outside. Daddy, And, Arthur interrupted, his voice turning to ice. I have security cameras in the tack room. I had them installed last month because we suspected a stable hand of stealing feed. Jessica froze. She had forgotten. Or she hadn't known. Arthur pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, accessing the security app. He watched for 10 seconds. His face grew harder with every passing frame. He turned the phone screen around so Jessica could see it. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Jessica sliding the object into Leo's bag while the children's backs were turned. You tried to frame a 5-year-old, Arthur whispered. The level of disgust in his voice was absolute. You tried to brand your own brother a thief. He's not my brother, Jessica screamed, her facade shattering. He's a mongrel. They don't belong here. This is my house, my money. Not anymore, Arthur said. He stood up. He looked old, tired, but resolute. Get out of my sight, Jessica. Go to the city apartment. I will deal with you on Monday. And I suggest you start looking for a job, because the allowance stops today. Jessica looked at Lana. She looked at the twins. She let out a sound of pure frustration and stormed off the terrace. Lana let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She looked at Mia. You saw her? Lana asked. Yeah, Mia shrugged. She's sneaky, but not very smart. Arthur looked at Mia. A slow grin spread across his face. It was a look of genuine pride. Sharp, Arthur muttered. Observant. Ruthless when necessary. He raised his glass of iced tea to the little girl. You really are a Huntington. 3 months after the stable incident, the leaves in Central Park had turned to a crisp, deep russet. The New York social season was peaking with the annual Huntington Winter Gala at the Plaza Hotel. In previous years, this had been Jessica's stage. Tonight, the spotlight belonged to someone else. Lana stood before the full-length mirror in her Upper East Side townhouse, smoothing the silk of her midnight blue gown. She didn't look like a waitress anymore. She looked like a woman who had found her power. Beside her, Leo struggled with his bow tie, while Mia practiced her royal wave. Remember, Lana whispered, kneeling to look them in the eye, we aren't there to show off. We're there to show them who we are. The ballroom was a sea of crystal chandeliers and whispered rumors. When the doors opened and the announcer called out, Mr. Arthur Huntington and Miss Lana Bennett, the room fell into a stunned hush. Lana walked with a grace that silenced the skeptics, her hand resting firmly on Arthur's arm. Arthur took the stage, the twins standing proudly beside him. For 40 years I built an empire of stone and steel, Arthur's voice boomed. I thought legacy was about buildings. I was wrong. It's about the people we leave behind. I am proud to formally introduce my grandchildren, Leo and Mia, and to thank the woman who raised them with a strength I have spent my life trying to emulate. The applause was thunderous until the back doors were kicked open. It's a lie! It's all a lie! The crowd gasped as a disheveled figure stumbled into the light. It was Tom. His expensive suit was stained, his hair was matted, and he smelled of cheap whiskey and desperation. He had been blacklisted from every firm in the city, and the weight of his own choices had finally broken him. You think she's a saint? Tom screamed, pointing a shaking finger at Lana. She's a manipulator. She targeted the Huntington name from the start. I have proof. He waved a stack of crumpled papers. I'm filing a lawsuit for $50 million. Emotional distress. Fraud. I'll take everything you have. The security guards moved to intercept him, but Arthur held up a hand. Let him speak. Every court needs a jester. Tom reached the front of the stage, his eyes wild. I was the one who picked the donor. I made this happen. I deserve my share of the empire. You deserve exactly what you gave them, Tom, Lana said, her voice cutting through his hysteria like a knife. "Nothing." Suddenly, a voice spoke up from the side of the stage. "He's right about one thing, Dad. He did make a choice." Jessica stepped out from the wings. She wasn't wearing couture. She was wearing a simple professional suit. Over the last few months, working in the company's mailroom under her father's strict orders, the princess had finally grown up. "I spent years listening to Tom talk about how he was going to manage you, Dad," Jessica said, looking at her father. Then she turned to Tom. "And I have the recordings. Every time you bragged about how you'd use me to get to the CEO chair. Every time you called Lana a placeholder while you waited for a better life." Jessica handed a thumb drive to her father. "It's all there. The fraud isn't Lana's. It's his." Arthur's face turned to stone. He looked down at Tom as if he were an insect. "Thomas, you signed an ironclad non-disclosure and morality agreement when you joined the firm. By causing this scene tonight, you've triggered a liquidated damages clause worth $20 million. My lawyers will be at your motel room by dawn to begin seizing what's left of your life." Tom's face drained of color. He looked around the room, searching for a single sympathetic face. He found only disgust. Even the reporters were no longer taking photos of a victim. They were documenting a collapse. "Security," Arthur said softly. "Throw this trash out." As the guards dragged a screaming, sobbing Tom towards the service exit, the ballroom remained silent. The man who had tried to play everyone had finally run out of moves. Lana looked at Arthur, then at Jessica. The rift wasn't fully healed, but for the first time there was a bridge. "Now," Arthur said, his voice softening as he looked at the twins, "I believe there is a 10-tier chocolate cake waiting for us in the dining room." "With sprinkles?" Leo asked hopefully. "With everything," Arthur promised. As the music resumed and the gala continued, Lana stood on the balcony for a moment, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. She had entered this world as a ghost of Tom's past, mocked and belittled. She was leaving it as the architect of her own future. The bride's family had tried to mock her, but in the end, they became the family she never knew she needed. The secret was out, the villains were gone, and for Lana Bennett, the real story was just beginning. In the high-stakes world of the elite, money can buy almost anything, but it can't buy class, and it certainly can't hide the truth forever. This story is a reminder that the people we dismiss today might be the ones holding the keys to our kingdom tomorrow. Lana's grace under fire and the eventual redemption of even Jessica show that while karma is a slow burn, it never misses a target. If you loved seeing Tom get exactly what he deserved, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more tales of justice and high society drama. Click the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. The secretary they fired for being too plain returns as the new CEO. Share this video with someone who needs to see that the underdog always has a fighting chance. Thanks for watching.